My fiancée said, "Your family isn't coming to the wedding. They are embarrassing and my friends will judge me." I said, "Okay." Then I invited 0 people, including myself. She found out at the altar. I am Felix, a master plumber, 31 years old, running a small but busy business right here in Phoenix. I started apprenticing straight out of high school and got my license at 23. 3 years ago, I scraped together the money to open my own shop. It is nothing glamorous, just an honest, blue-collar operation that keeps my 2 employees busy and pays my mortgage. I drive a truck I paid cash for, and my tools are top quality. I am not wealthy, but I am stable. That kind of stability comes from valuing real work and family above all else. My family, the Colemans, are loud, warm, and unapologetically working class. My mother, Patricia, managed a diner for 30 years, and she knows every regular's order by heart. My father is a retired welder whose hands look like leather. Sunday dinners at their house are mandatory. Mom makes pot roast, Dad tells the same stories, and we all talk over each other, arguing about sports and jobs. It is chaos, but it is home. When my brother Jake needed help fixing his truck, we spent a weekend in the driveway doing it. We show up when someone needs help. We do not put on airs. I met Victoria Hayes, 29, 2 years ago. She was the absolute antithesis of my world pharmaceutical sales, perfectly put together, driving a new Lexus, living in a downtown luxury apartment with a rooftop pool. The first time I saw her, she was talking about a weekend trip to the Bahamas. She radiated success and sophistication. I felt out of place on our first date, which was at a steakhouse where the wine list was thicker than my business license manual. Victoria was smart, ambitious, and knew how to command a room. She told me she liked that I was grounded and authentic. At the time, I thought that meant she genuinely respected my work ethic and my life. Looking back, maybe she just meant I was different from the corporate suits she usually dated. We moved quickly. Within 6 months, we were talking about a future. I proposed on our 1-year anniversary, spending 2 months' profit on a ring she had hinted her friends would be impressed by. She cried, said yes, and immediately uploaded photos to all her social media accounts. That is when the wedding planning began, and the finances started to blur. Our initial budget, which was supposed to be a reasonable $15,000, was instantly forgotten. Victoria immediately went into full coordinator mode, armed with color-coded spreadsheets. The wedding, 9 months out, was scheduled for a vineyard venue. My role was simply to show up, agree, and write checks. My opinions on dinner menus or chair covers were not needed. She knew best, I figured. Happy wife, happy life. The budget rocketed to $30,000 fast. Every time I questioned a cost, like the $1,400 for fabric to drape over chairs, Victoria would become defensive. It's our special day, and we only do this once. My friends will be there, and I want everything to be perfect, she would say. The money was savings I had earmarked to expand the shop and hire another employee. It felt like the money was paying for a status symbol, not a marriage. I bit my tongue, avoiding the conflict, telling myself the cost was the price of acceptance. My internal conflict was starting to break me. I was sacrificing my future to play by her rules. The financial sacrifices only intensified the scrutiny from Victoria's inner circle, leading to inevitable friction with my family. Victoria came from wealth. Her father was a financial consultant, and her mother was an interior designer who worked for wealthy clients. When I visited their house, there was always an undercurrent of polite condescension. They were gracious, but their questions about my business were asked in a tone that suggested they were humoring a child. Her father once asked if I had considered expanding into commercial work, as if fixing someone's flooded basement was inherently less respectable than fixing a broken pipe in a high-rise. Victoria's friends, lawyers, and finance people were worse. At engagement parties, they would look at me with curiosity. I once overheard one of them whisper, "I mean, he's nice, but a plumber," followed by giggling. Victoria never shut it down. She would just smile thinly and change the subject. It made me feel like an exhibit, something she had temporarily acquired that did not quite match the rest of her collection. I struggled with the fear that if I didn't comply, I would lose her, cementing my feeling that I had to constantly earn acceptance in their high-status world. Meanwhile, my family welcomed Victoria with open arms, maybe too enthusiastically. Mom hugged her like a long-lost daughter. Dad immediately started telling his worst jokes. Sunday dinners got louder when she came. Everyone wanted to know her and include her. But I noticed Victoria getting tense. She would check her phone constantly, and her smiles did not reach her eyes. When I asked about it, she just said she was stressed from work. The first serious crack appeared 3 months before the wedding as we were addressing the invitations at her apartment. She had an elaborate system with calligraphy pens and wax seals, all very social media worthy. I was reading off addresses for my side. "How many people from your side are we inviting?" she asked, setting down her pen. I said about 40, which was our parents, siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins, and a few family friends. "That seems like a lot," she said carefully. "My side has 70 people." I pointed out the disparity. "Yes, but those are important people," she insisted. "Business connections, family friends who could be useful contacts, people who matter." The words echoed in my head. People who matter. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. "My family matters to me," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "Of course they do," she replied quickly. "I just mean, we need to be strategic about our guest list. We want the right kind of people at our wedding." "What the right kind of people?" Translation: not welders, rail yard workers, and elementary school teachers. I let it go that night, deciding to avoid the argument, but the cold certainty that this was not going to end well settled in my gut. As the weeks passed, Victoria's comments shifted from passive suggestions to direct critiques. "Does your dad really need to wear a bolo tie? It is so regional. Your mom talks really loud. Can you ask her to keep her voice down at the reception?" Each comment was delivered casually, like just a helpful refinement, but they all amounted to the same message. My family was an embarrassment she was tolerating. When I pushed back gently, saying my dad loved his bolo ties, and my mother's volume was just enthusiasm, Victoria would sigh, making it clear that my defense was another inconvenience she had to suffer. My emotional state was shifting from quiet sacrifice to deep-seated unease and guilt over letting my family be judged. The pressure culminated at the final Sunday dinner before the wedding. Mom went all out, Dad bought expensive drinks, and my sister Emma made a sweet, corny slideshow of Victoria and me. The atmosphere was loud and chaotic, full of genuine affection. I looked around that table, at my whole, imperfect, loving family, and felt grateful. Victoria, however, barely touched her food. She smiled that thin, fake smile she used for difficult clients and kept checking her phone. She claimed a headache and insisted on leaving early. As I stayed behind to help Mom clean up, she looked at me with deep concern. "Is Victoria okay?" she asked quietly. She seemed uncomfortable. I lied easily, saying she was just stressed about the wedding. Mom gave me that look, the one that said she knew I was lying to myself but loved me too much to call me out. That night, I knew I could no longer avoid the internal conflict. The reality of the two worlds was finally crushing me. I had a feeling the stress Victoria was feeling was about more than just linens and flower arrangements. The final Sunday dinner set the stage for the definitive confrontation that I had been dreading. The next morning, Victoria called and asked me to come to her apartment. She said we needed to talk about something important, and the careful, measured tone of her voice told me this was not going to be good. It was the tone people use when they have rehearsed bad news. I showed up expecting maybe another complaint about the florist or a demand for a menu upgrade. Small problems with simple, expensive solutions. Instead, she sat me down on her pristine white couch with an expression that made my stomach drop. "Felix, She started, the formality a terrible sign. We need to discuss the guest list. I have been thinking, and I really feel like we should limit your family's attendance. The words hung in the air, my brain struggling to process the euphemism. Limited how? I asked. Just immediate family. Your parents, your siblings. That's it. No aunts, uncles, cousins, or family friends. She wanted me to uninvite Aunt Linda, who had practically been my third parent and who babysat me every day after school for 6 years. Uncle Mike, who taught me how to use tools and change my first tire, the reason I got into a trade instead of racking up student loans for a degree I did not want. She wanted me to erase them. You want me to uninvite people who have been in my life since I was born? I asked, forcing the question out. People who have always been there for every important moment. She looked away, avoiding my gaze. It's not personal, Felix. It's just that this wedding is really important to me, to us, and I need it to be perfect. I have been planning this for months, putting my heart into every detail. What does that have to do with my family? She hesitated, trying to find the diplomatic phrasing that would make this sound reasonable, but there was no reasonable way to say it. Your family is wonderful. She started, and I knew whatever came next was going to be ugly. But they are very different from my family and friends. And I am worried about how things will look, how they will fit with the aesthetic I have created. The aesthetic. Like my family was furniture that clashed with her color scheme. The shock was immediately followed by a clear, cold certainty. You think my family is embarrassing, I said flatly. She stood up, getting defensive now. That's not what I said! That's exactly what you said. I finished for her, just in fancier words. She stopped trying to sugarcoat it. I am trying to be practical here, Felix. Think about it. Your father with his loud stories about welding accidents. Your mother being so loud everyone can hear her across the room. Jake's kids potentially knocking things over. My colleagues will be there, Felix. Important people from the pharmaceutical industry. District supervisors. I need everything to be elegant and refined. My family isn't elegant and refined enough for you. I stated, the words tasting like metal. Don't twist my words! I am trying to protect you, she insisted, desperation creeping in. If your family acts the way they usually do at gatherings, people will judge. They will judge you for coming from that background. They will judge me for marrying into it. I don't want that for us. I am trying to save us both from embarrassment. The insult was so blatant, so absolute, that my brain had to reboot to catch up. She genuinely believed she was doing me a favor by hiding my family away like they were something shameful. So, what exactly are you proposing? I asked, my voice dangerously calm, that familiar feeling of pragmatic detachment starting to take over. Just immediate family from your side. Parents and siblings. That's still 7 people. That's reasonable, Felix. Most couples have to make hard choices. And everyone else who helped raise me, who has been there for every important moment of my life, they just don't get to see me get married because they might embarrass you in front of your fancy colleagues. Her face flushed. You're being dramatic. People cut guest lists all the time. It's a normal part of wedding planning. We can do a casual backyard thing after the wedding for your extended family. Something more appropriate for them. Appropriate for them. Like my family needed a separate event because they were not good enough for the real celebration. You know what the worst part is, I said quietly. You have known all along who my family is. You have been to Sunday dinners. You smiled and acted like you enjoyed it. And this whole time, you have been planning a wedding where half of them weren't welcome. I did not know what else to do. I knew you would react like this, she pleaded. That is why I waited until now, when everything's already booked and paid for. I thought you would see reason. She had waited. She had waited until I was financially invested, until deposits were non-refundable, until backing out would cost $26,000 in lost fees and deposits. Strategic, calculated. like a sales pitch to a difficult client. The emotional betrayal, coupled with the financial coercion, stripped away the last of my emotional investment. The anger I should have felt vanished. It was replaced by cold clarity, complete detachment, and an absolute finality. Okay, I said. She blinked, suspicion warring with relief on her face. She had been ready for a fight, not easy surrender. Okay, you're right. We should limit my side. Really? Really? I affirmed, standing up. You have put so much work into this wedding. I do not want anything to ruin it for you. Relief washed over her features. She actually smiled, believing she had won. I left her apartment 10 minutes later, that chilling phrase ringing in my head. My fiancée said, "Your family isn't coming to the wedding. They're embarrassing and my friends will judge me." I said, "Okay." My decision was made, and the financial cost no longer mattered. The decision made, I drove home in silence, the emotional investment in Victoria completely dead. I sat in my truck in the driveway for 20 minutes, staring at the closed garage door, feeling nothing but a chilling, pragmatic need for action. I went inside, opened my laptop, and got to work. The process was systematic. I needed to dismantle the wedding she had planned, piece by piece, starting with the biggest financial commitments. The first call was to the Vineyard venue, a woman named Patricia answering cheerfully. "Patricia, I need to cancel the wedding," I stated plainly. There was a moment of silence, then papers rustled. "You are aware you have already paid the $5,000 deposit, and that is non-refundable," she said carefully. "And because we are within 90 days of the event, there is an additional cancellation fee of 15% of the total booking, which comes to another $3,000. $8,000 gone instantly, just to not get married at a place I never wanted." "That is fine," I confirmed. "Process the cancellation. I will send the written confirmation and payment for the fee by the end of the day." She tried to suggest I take a few days to think about it, mentioning that couples often fight, but I assured her my decision was final. The second call was to Raymond, the caterer, who had already taken a $2,000 deposit. He informed me that since we were within the 60-day window, I was liable for 50% of the total contract value since they had scheduled staff and ordered specialty ingredients. $2,000 deposit plus $8,000 penalty on the remaining $16,000. "How much total?" I asked. $10,000, he replied. I told him to send the final invoice. I would pay it today. I moved down the list. Stephanie, the photographer, cheerfully apologized for the breakup, but reminded me that cancellations within 8 weeks forfeit the full deposit of $1,500. As she had turned down other bookings, I accepted it. Diane, the florist, needed an additional $1,000 to cover specialty materials she could not return, bringing her total loss to $3,000. Kevin, the DJ, was only $500 lost. The transportation company was $400, since I was outside their 30-day window for additional fees. Finally, I called Gloria, the wedding planner Victoria had insisted on. She charged $3,000, half of which was already paid. Gloria informed me the $1,500 was non-refundable, as she had put in substantial hours coordinating with all the vendors. "Keep it," I told her. "Cancel everything on your end. Victoria can handle her own confirmation." By the time I finished making the calls, I was sitting at my kitchen table, surrounded by notes detailing the financial damage. I pulled up my business accounting software and tallied the expenses. The $5,000 deposit plus $3,000 fee for the venue, $10,000 for the caterer, $1,500 for the photographer, $3,000 for the florist, $500 for the DJ, $400 for transportation, $1,500 for the planner, plus all the smaller deposits I had already paid for invitations and the cake tasting. The running total was $26,000 up in smoke. $26,000. That was expansion capital for my business, money for a new truck, A year of mortgage payments. Gone. Just gone. But as I stared at the number, the expected anger or regret did not come. Instead, there was a quiet, cold certainty. It was worth every single penny. It was a cheap price to pay to find out who she really was before I legally tied myself to her transactional view of the world. The next step was to ensure no one showed up for the non-existent wedding. I had the master guest list with the 110 names. I drafted a short, simple email. Dear family and friends, we regret to inform you that the wedding scheduled for June 10th has been canceled. We apologize for any inconvenience this may cause. Please do not send gifts or travel to the venue. Thank you for your understanding. Felix. I hit send to everyone on the list. The entire process took maybe 4 hours of methodical, clinical work. 4 hours to systematically dismantle months of planning. I sat back when it was done, feeling detached and strangely calm. My phone started buzzing instantly. Victoria's friends, her parents, random guests. But I blocked Victoria on everything, changed my locks, and eventually, I just turned the phone off. I had done exactly what needed to be done. The quiet 4 hours of calculated action led immediately to the explosion of communication from Victoria's world. I ignored the continuous flood of calls. 60, 3 missed calls, 40, 2 text messages, 27 voicemails, and kept my phone off. There was nothing left to say. Instead, I drove straight to my parents' house. They were watching television, the comforting smell of my mother's cooking still lingering in the air. My mother, Patricia, took one look at my face and knew everything. She did not ask about the wedding or the ring. It's off, I said simply. It's all canceled. Mom moved toward me without a word, hugging me tight, the way she used to when I was a kid and something really hurt. She just held on, offering silent, unconditional love. Dad, usually loud, was quiet for a long minute. What happened, son? He asked. I told them everything: Victoria's comments about the family, the demand to uninvite everyone, the reasons she gave about our lack of aesthetic. Dad took a deep breath. You did the right thing, Felix. That $26,000 is a cheap price to pay to find out who she really was before you married her. Their validation was the shield I needed. My brother, Jake, showed up an hour later. Mom must have called him. He brought takeout and we sat around the kitchen table. We did not talk about the wedding much, just being together, surrounded by the warmth and familiarity that Victoria had scorned. This was my sanctuary, the core of my identity that she had tried to shame me out of. The next morning, the external pressure began. Harold Hayes, Victoria's father, showed up at my house. He was dressed impeccably, a tall guy who always looked ready for a board meeting. He did not yell, but his fury was evident in that controlled, wealthy person's way. Felix, what in God's name is going on? He demanded. Victoria is hysterical. The wedding is canceled. What are you thinking? I am thinking I am not marrying someone who is ashamed of my family, I replied, standing my ground on my own porch. That's not what this is about. He countered quickly. She was trying to make practical decisions about the guest list. You have humiliated her! Canceled everything without even discussing it with her first. That is incredibly immature. She made a decision about my family without discussing it with me. I made a decision about our wedding. Seems fair, I said. I have lost $26,000 in cancellation fees and deposits. Don't talk to me about costs. He stepped closer, trying to use intimidation, but I felt nothing but detachment. You have a responsibility here, Felix. You proposed to her. You made promises. You don't just walk away. Watch me. I closed the door in his face. I heard him yelling something about lawyers and contracts and obligations from the sidewalk, but I simply walked away. I felt a surge of resilience. His corporate threats meant nothing here. Over the next week, the social media campaign started. Victoria's friends painted me as the heartless villain who left her at the altar. Poor Victoria, abandoned by her heartless fiancé. Naturally, they left out the part about the family shaming. A few mutual friends reached out, asking for my side. I gave them the basic facts. Victoria did not want my family at the wedding because they were embarrassing. I disagreed. The wedding was off. That was it. Most people thought I had overreacted, but a few understood, realizing the decision was about self-worth, not just cost. My family continued to act as my shield, checking on me, helping me with work, and providing the genuine connection that highlighted the superficiality I had escaped. The social media shaming from Victoria's friends had mostly died down, but the truth about the family shaming was rapidly spreading among our mutual acquaintances, setting the stage for the planned wedding date. The day arrived. It was a clear, warm Saturday morning, the kind that should have marked a new beginning. I woke up in my own bed, in my own house, with a feeling of absolute peace. There were no obligations and absolutely no regrets. I took my time getting up, made a proper breakfast, and went for a long drive in my truck with the windows down, enjoying the simple feeling of my own freedom. My phone, which I had only turned on for brief checks, buzzed around 11 o'clock. It was a text from my friend Dave, who had received my cancellation email, but who had apparently remained on Victoria's elaborate vendor list. "Dude, are you seeing this?" He wrote. "Seeing what?" "Victoria's at the venue." A wave of cold, intense satisfaction washed over me. Victoria, it turned out, had never told the vineyard I had canceled. Or perhaps she believed she could still force the issue, arriving as if I would simply materialize and go through with the ceremony. She showed up in her wedding dress with her bridesmaids, her family was there, and her 70 guests were milling around, confused. Dave started sending me short videos and screen grabs of social media posts. The scene was pure, high-stakes chaos. Victoria stood at the venue entrance in her flawless white dress, looking utterly lost. Her bridesmaids, frantic, were glued to their phones, making useless calls. The venue coordinator, Patricia, was trying to explain that the event had been officially canceled and the contract terminated 2 weeks ago. Victoria, in the videos, was insisting there must be a mistake, her father yelling at the staff, her mother starting to cry into her silk handkerchief. Eventually, the coordinator had to retrieve the signed cancellation paperwork, my signature and the date clearly visible, and show it to Victoria in front of her assembled guests. The look on her face in those videos was something else entirely. The confusion drained away, giving way to a realization of her complete, absolute defeat, which then hardened into white, hot rage. She was publicly and utterly exposed. She tried calling me right there. My phone rang with her number, and I watched it, not answering. I thought back to the conversation in her apartment, and the finality of my decision hit with maximum impact. I had invited 0 people, including myself. She had found out standing at the altar. It was a profound, definitive act of self-affirmation. I put my phone back on silent and drove toward my shop, ready to return to the honest work she had deemed beneath her. The finality of the $26,000 loss felt small compared to the triumph of protecting my dignity. The wedding that wasn't instantly shifted public opinion and forced Victoria to confront the public consequences of my silence. The truth came out quickly. While Victoria's side scrambled to spread her version, that I had suffered a mental breakdown and acted out of spite. Too many people knew what she had originally said about my family. One of her own bridesmaids, apparently feeling guilty over the humiliation, let slip the real story, that Victoria had demanded I uninvite most of my relatives because they were embarrassing and did not fit her aesthetic. Public opinion, especially among the mutual friends who valued loyalty, shifted fast. I returned to work that Monday like nothing had happened. I had a complex kitchen renovation to finish, 3 bathroom repairs scheduled, and a sewer line that needed a camera inspection. My apprentice asked if I was okay. I just said, "Yeah, just a canceled wedding," and he did not push it. Life went back to the honest, working rhythm that Victoria had looked down upon. I found a deep, quiet satisfaction in the reality of plumbing, I fix what is broken. I accomplish something tangible every day. It was a life free of pretense and status games. Victoria's attempts to contact me became increasingly desperate over the next few weeks. She sent flowers to my shop, which I left outside until they wilted. She showed up at my house one evening, crying, begging me to talk, but I did not open the door. She had friends call me, hoping to use sympathy as leverage. Every attempt was met with unwavering detachment. She even escalated it by having her mother call mine. My mother, Patricia, eventually took the call. She came away from the conversation shaking her head. That woman tried to convince me you were being unreasonable. Mom said, her voice sharp with disbelief. When I told her what Victoria said about us, she actually defended it. Said Victoria was just trying to have a sophisticated wedding. Sophisticated? I repeated, the word tasting sore. Your father and I aren't sophisticated enough. Apparently not. Mom confirmed, her eyes blazing with protective love. That family can keep their sophistication. We have something better. That conversation secured my emotional boundaries absolutely. There was no misunderstanding, only two different value systems, and I was safe and affirmed within mine. The realization that Victoria's own mother defended the insult proved that this was not a mistake born of stress, but a core belief system I wanted no part of. I continued to cut off all communication, determined to secure the emotional and professional life she had tried to shame me out of. 6 weeks after the canceled wedding, despite all my efforts to maintain silence, Victoria made one last, brazen attempt to regain control. It was Sunday dinner at my parents' house. My whole family was there. Mom, Dad, Jake, Emma, and all the kids, filling the house with the usual loving chaos. The front door opened and everyone instantly fell silent. Victoria stood in the doorway, completely uninvited, looking pale but determined. Felix, please, can we just talk? She pleaded, stepping into the hallway. I stood up immediately. How did you get in? The door was unlocked, she said. I need to explain. I made a mistake. I was wrong about your family. I see that now. Before I could even formulate a response, my mother, Patricia, stepped forward, her voice ringing with protective authority. Young lady, you called us embarrassing. Said we weren't good enough for your wedding, and now you show up here uninvited. Or Mrs. Coleman, I am so sorry. Victoria insisted, tears starting to well up. I was stressed, and I said awful things, but I love your son. I want to make this right. My father cleared his throat, his gaze heavy and unwavering. You want to make it right? That ship sailed when you insulted my wife, my kids, my family. You don't get to decide we're embarrassing one day and then show up expecting forgiveness the next. He stood right beside my mother, asserting their unified front. Victoria looked at me desperately, ignoring them. Please, Felix, I have learned my lesson. I will do anything. Then Emma, my younger sister, usually quiet and averse to drama, spoke up from the kitchen table. You had your chance, she said simply. You showed Felix exactly who you were. He was smart enough to believe you. Victoria finally looked around the room. There were no allies, no sympathy, just a united family protecting their own. She was exposed in the sanctuary she had sought to infiltrate. She looked back at me, her last hope. They do, I agreed, my voice calm but firm. And sometimes those mistakes cost you everything. You need to leave now. I am not leaving until we talk about this. She argued, trying to inject some authority back into the situation. Jake stood up, all 6 feet 3 inches of him, his posture completely non-threatening but utterly final. She said, leave. Victoria knew the battle was lost. She finally turned and walked out the door, crying hysterically, leaving us in silence for a moment before the usual noises of dinner and family conversations slowly started back up. That was the last time I ever saw her. I later heard through the grapevine that she moved to another city a few months later. She took a job somewhere else, starting over, perhaps looking for someone who came from the right kind of family for her transactional lifestyle. As for me, life went on. The business grew. I hired another apprentice and bought new equipment. I started bidding on bigger commercial jobs, building the company and the life I had always wanted. Free of the need to earn validation or apologize for my roots. I had lost a fiancée, but I had affirmed myself and secured the unwavering loyalty of the only people who truly mattered. The $26,000 was long gone, but the peace and clarity it bought were priceless. I was home and I was exactly where I belonged. The $26,000 was long gone, but the peace and clarity it bought were priceless. I had lost a fiancé, but I had affirmed myself and secured the unwavering loyalty of the only people who truly mattered. I was home and I was exactly where I belonged.